Oh, hello Monty, do you want to go out? Okay. What have you got in your head? What is it, Monty? You got paint on your head. Where did you get the paint from? Hello BookTube, how are you doing? I thought today I'd do a tag for you. I've not been very active because between work and just sorting out my house at the moment, I've been doing lots of painting and things like that. Yeah, not been very active, so I'm sorry, but I thought I'd try and check in with a tag video. And this is a really fun tag video, a kind of new one by SHAWN the Book Maniac. It's the Mookse and the Gripes bucket list book tag, and you know, as it says on the can, it's a kind of bucket list tag. 10 books to read before you die kind of thing, and it's to promote a podcast, and all the info about the podcast is down in the description. If you haven't seen one of these videos or heard of the podcast yet, it's all down there for you. But yeah, I'm going to get into it because I've been really enjoying watching what other people have to say. I've tried to do my best not to take too much influence from other people and just kind of take what they said, because I can be like that sometimes. I hear something mentioned in a BookTube video and I just keep thinking about it for days, and it's all I want to read for days and days and days. And then a few days later, maybe I don't want to read it so much. Something else takes my fancy. So I've really tried to whittle it down to the things that have been in the back of my head for quite a long time that I've been wanting to read. And I'll start off with a book that's been on my shelves for ages, and that's Angela Carter's Book of Fairy Tales. She's a novelist and short story writer that I've really enjoyed in the past, and I think I got this book as I was coming out of a bit of an Angela Carter reading frenzy, and I think I just needed time to read other things, so I never got to it. But yeah, The Bloody Chamber, which is also fairy tales, is amazing, yeah, I'd be really interested to see what she does with these fairy tales and which fairy tales she decides to include. Yeah, I'd really love to read that at some point. And then next up is I suppose in kind of similar territory. It's The 1001 Nights. Very influential, turns up everywhere, and yeah, it's one of those books that I can't believe I haven't really got to yet. And it's still one of those sort of mysterious books that I just feel like I'm going to really enjoy when I get to it, and I want to put in the effort to read it, hopefully soon, but if not soon, hopefully before I die. The next up is a novel. It's The Awakening by Chopin. This book I first encountered at uni. It was when I was in a seminar. It was when I was doing my masters, and part of the master's degree was a sort of introduction to teaching seminars, and so I was basically thrown into a first year seminar, and I'd sit in, take notes, sort of engage in the discussion, get to know everyone. Then later on in the semester, I would teach a seminar myself. And one of the books that came up in one of the seminars that I was sitting in on was The Awakening by Chopin, and they weren't looking at the book as a whole. They were just looking at I think the last chapter, and they had an excerpt from the last chapter, and yeah, the scene really just really had me. Really, I really wanted to know, I suppose, why the character was in this situation, and it's at least at the point I was reading in this sort of small extract, felt like it could go in either of 2 or 3 directions. I didn't know what was going to happen, and so yeah, it really held my curiosity and has just stayed with me really over the years, and I really want to get to it. And then next up, maybe of little surprise, is Borges' complete fictions. I've read his Ficciones, basically his first short story collection, or I suppose his first 2 short story collections combined, and it's great. Probably the best thing I read last year, and has just kind of I don't know, I suppose I'm an addict now. I kind of want to just keep reading as much as I can. I have here his poetry. I don't have many books to show you at the moment. They're all in storage. But I want to show you something. So here's his collected poetry, or selected poems, I should say. So yeah, and I really want to read more of his fiction. Yeah, that's really all I can really say there. And then in a similar vein is W.S. Graham, a Scottish poet, and I read his selected poems last year, but I really want to read his collected poems, you know, more or less everything he ever wrote. And I was reading his selected poems sort of around November, December last year. I was working night shifts for Royal Mail. I was sort of sorting parcels, and I was reading it at my sort of lunch break, you know, at like 3 in the morning, so maybe I wasn't in the best sort of mental state, or maybe I wasn't totally conscious when I was reading this, but it really struck me, and it really stood out really with the poetry that I'd read that year, and it's just one of those moments where I was like, yeah, I really want to just read as much as I can by this poet, and you know, every now and then I might read something by a poet, and I read maybe a slim sort of selected poems, and I'm like, yeah, okay, that's a good taste, I'm going to move on to someone else. Whereas with W.S. Graham, he's one of those poets where I wasn't content to leave it with that slim selection. I just wanted more. Yeah, I want to get to his collected poems before I die. Another one is a sort of a booktube, a book that I found on booktube that I'd really love to read and has kind of stayed with me, and that's Nervous System by Lina. I think it's Meruane, I want to say, or Meruane. Yeah, please correct me on the pronunciation if it's wrong. And this is a novel or novella, and I heard Mark Nash talking about it, and he read some excerpts from it, and yeah, the writing just seemed so exquisite. Just the detail of the writing, the allusions to different sort of illnesses and or different conditions, I should say, and it sound. I don't know whether it's going to be sort of squeamish and a bit of a hard read, or whether it's going to be beautiful, but it was definitely very arresting, what I heard, and seen it over at Beating Around the Books. I think he's also read it, and I think she enjoyed it as well, and yeah, that's really held my curiosity. I'll try to link the video where Mark Nash reads a bit from it below if you're interested. And then next up, this is maybe a bit of a cop-out, but I've just put here Dante Collection, because I've read the Divine Comedy, another book I read, or I should say poem really, that I read last year, after finishing it, I just knew I wanted to read a different translation, and I saw it was Christina over at Knitting Books, etc. She was reading an edition by I want to say it's Alma Books, and they have a really lovely looking sort of edition of the Divine Comedy in 3 volumes, and I went digging on their website, and they have a sort of Dante sort of bundle, a little Dante collection, kind of deal, which has the is it the Vita Nuova, and it has some of his shorter sort of I think some of his other poems that weren't the Divine Comedy or the Vita Nuova, and then it has the life of Dante, a little autobiography that I think was written by Boccaccio. I think it was, and it's a nice little bundle, which is at a very reasonable price, and for quite a long time now that's been sort of bookmarked on my on my browser, and I've been wanting to pull the trigger, and maybe at some point I will, so I didn't really want to narrow it down to any of those, but yeah, I just really wanted to get as much out of those books as I can at some point. And then next up, number 8, is The Castle by Franz Kafka. I've read some of his short stories. I think The Hunger Artist is one that really stands out, and A Country Doctor as well. It's really one that I really enjoyed. And I've heard people talk about The Castle, and out of his unfinished novels, this one stood out to me the most. I brought it up in my sort of books I might read for August, and I just didn't get around to it, and it may be that I don't get around to it for quite a while, but I'd really love to read that. I think I've heard some people talking about it probably kind of spoiling most of the plot, but that doesn't really put me off. It just makes me want to read it even more. I think I find it quite funny, but I'm looking forward to it. And then next up, number 9, is The Cosmic Trilogy by C.S. Lewis. I believe I've read the first book in the trilogy, Out of the Silent Planet, but I haven't read the other two, and I think I'd quite like to try and just read them all through in one go. I think the kind of idea of them is it's a guy who ends up sort of by accident on this space mission to Mars, and it's sort of pre-NASA and stuff, so we don't really know what's there. And it's this wonderful sort of almost Edenic sort of place, and these kind of very, very innocent sort of life forms who live there, and it just sounds really fascinating. I say sounds like I've read the first one, and then I think it moves on to Venus, and then there's some kind of weird thing going on in the third book. I don't really understand what it's supposed to be about, so I'd like to work out what that's about. The Cosmic Trilogy. I think more recently it's being published as the Space Trilogy, but in the edition I have, it's the Cosmic Trilogy. And then finally, to kind of finish things off with another classic, there's the Odyssey by Homer, because I think the idea of the Odyssey always stood out to me more than the Iliad. I read the Iliad back in June when Steve Donoghue and Matthew over at Maybury Book Club were doing a kind of buddy read of it, and were inviting people to sort of read along. And I think they did the Odyssey either in July or maybe it was back in August, and I just couldn't fit it in. I couldn't find a copy in time. But since being a kid, I've found the idea of the Odyssey just really interesting. I used to have a little red book of folk tales and legends and myths, and in there it's got the sort of the little excerpt or a sort of paraphrasing of the bit in the Odyssey with Cyclops, and it's got the image of them driving the lance or the oar or whatever it is into Cyclops' eye, and I just always found it kind of funny in a grim way, and it kind of stuck with me, I've just been interested to read the whole thing, and so that's probably I've read the Iliad as well, so I wouldn't be comfortable I suppose leaving it with having just read the Iliad and not having read the Odyssey. So there we go. That's my 10 books for the Mookse and the Gripes bucket list, book tag. Sorry if I didn't elaborate on the books maybe as much as I could, but there you have it. Thanks for watching. I won't tag anyone in particular. Loads of people have been tagged. But again, as many people say, if you want to do it, please do. And I'll try to be back later this week. I want to try and do another Poetry Thursday video because I haven't done one for ages. Hopefully I'll do a Poetry Thursday video. And I've got the last 2 library tour videos just sitting on my computer, so I'll try to remember to upload them later on this week too. But for now, that's everything. I hope you're doing really well wherever you are. Please take care, have a great rest of your week, and bye bye.